2015 shapes up to be the year of easing. But with me down the line to discuss what has moved markets the most this week is Andrew Grantham. Andrew, now we've had surprises from China and Australia, a plethora of news stories from Greece, Denmark refuting expectations of becoming the next Swiss National Bank, and a case of no more Mr. Nice Guy from the ECB. But who would you say got it right, and what caused the biggest market reaction?
All of these policymakers are doing what they think is necessary for their domestic economies. Obviously, it looked as if China may have been slowing a little bit more than the government there would have liked, so they've added a little bit of stimulus. Australia is a similar country to Canada, but actually kind of the problems that we have here in terms of being very resource-driven are actually amplified in Australia. It's very dependent on China, very dependent on iron ore exports, and obviously there's a lot of maybe downside risk there at the moment. So they've decided that they need to ease policy to try and combat that, even with housing being a somewhat of a concern there as well as it is here. So they've tried to take out some insurance as well. In terms of Europe, it's I think these debates really between the ECB, different governments in Europe and Greece are going to continue for quite a while. Some political leaning towards finding a solution, but that's going to drag on for quite a few months. So we could be talking about this still in a month or two's time.
Today is indeed a jobs day. 257,000 jobs added in the month of January to the US economy. Wages jumped the most month over month in 6 years, and the participation rate also rose. So a pretty solid report all round, Andrew. Now, this may be a 1 month number, but are US companies finally getting to grips with the stronger dollar?
Yeah, well, what we've seen in the jobs report today for the US is that it looks as if another box has been ticked in terms of what Janet Yellen wants to see before she does finally raise interest rates. We've had strong job growth for a while, and we that continued in January, but that's not new news anymore. The new news is that wages do actually appear to be accelerating a little bit now. We did have some minimum wage increases in a number of different states, which may have flattered those figures a little bit, and that's something policymakers within the Federal Reserve will be trying to get to grips with, just how much that did influence the numbers. But it does look as if wages are finally moving in the right direction in terms of what the Federal Reserve wants to see. In terms of the stronger US dollar, what we're seeing is that the US dollar is strengthening really for a reason, and the payroll figures just underline that. And that reason is that the US economy does seem to be a lot stronger than most others, particularly in the developed world at the moment. That does cause concern for some exporters. We saw the trade data earlier in the week. Exports were a little bit on the soft side, and that was also shown up in GDP last week. But I think given the fact that consumer spending is getting quite a big boost from lower gasoline prices, the outlook for the US economy and for US job growth still looks pretty healthy.
Stocks zoomed after the report as markets actually seem to be taking good news as good news. So with this in mind, how patient can Janet Yellen be moving forward? Yeah,
well, definitely these the job figures that we had, and especially the wages, does move for kind of one step closer maybe to raising interest rates. Now, the strength of the US dollar is a concern. They added that international concerns are a problem, or maybe a factor for them going forwards into their last statement. But if the U.S. economy does keep improving at this pace, and if wages do keep picking up, then maybe she could still be raising interest rates by mid-year, or if not, kind of very soon in the second half of this year.
The market seemed to breathe a sigh of relief when the Bank of England held rates for the 71st time, but today we had disappointing trade balance figures which hit the pound. So with policy paths in mind of the two countries, where do you see sterling against the dollar trading in the coming weeks?
Well, I think sterling may weaken a little bit further against the US dollar. I think what we're going to see from the Bank of England is that they're in no rush to raise interest rates. Now, if we rewind back, not even 6 months really, where there was speculation during the middle of last year that the Bank of England could even be raising interest rates before the end of 2014. That obviously didn't happen, and the fact that we've got some reasonably weak inflation numbers, both headline and core inflation, in the UK has kind of pushed back those expectations. So I think we're still looking at a pretty patient Bank of England in terms of policy normalization. But obviously the job figures we got from the US today maybe push us a little bit closer to the Fed eventually hiking. So we do still expect the Fed to move before the Bank of England, and that could see a bit more weakness in terms of cable in the coming weeks.
Andrew, lovely to speak with you as always. Thank you for your time. Well, viewers, the trading week is coming to an end, but the TV team will be back on Monday to do it all again. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.